Nobody in Washington is losing sleep over your retirement account. That's the part they never say out loud. When Congress debates the debt ceiling, when the Treasury Secretary testifies, when financial media covers the deal, the conversation is always about government, about politics, about who won and who lost in the negotiation. Your 401k never comes up. Your IRA never comes up. The $600,000 you spent 30 years building never comes up. But here's what I've learned studying debt cycles for 5 decades. The people who never come up in the negotiation are always the ones who pay for it. Every single time. $38 trillion. That's what the United States owes right now. Not a projection. Not a worst-case scenario. The current number. Today. And it's climbing by roughly $1 trillion every 100 days. I want you to understand what that number actually means, not for politicians, not for economists, for the person sitting on 400,000, 800,000, 1.2 million in retirement savings wondering if it's going to be enough. Because the answer to that question depends entirely on something most financial advisors will never discuss with you. It depends on how they pay it back. And I can tell you exactly how they're going to do it. Because they've done it before. And the last time they did it, it quietly destroyed the purchasing power of an entire generation of savers. You have a window to protect yourself. It's not infinite. Stay with me for the next 20 minutes. Let me start with a man named Gerald. Gerald was 61 years old in 1971. He had spent 34 years working as a mechanical engineer in Ohio.
Careful man. Deliberate man.
He maxed his savings every year before maxing savings was even a cultural concept. By the time Nixon was in the White House, Gerald had accumulated what he calculated to be enough. $180,000 in savings, a pension, a paid-off home. His banker told him he was set. His accountant told him he was set. His brother-in-law, who worked at a brokerage, told him he was set. What none of them told Gerald, what none of them even understood, was that Washington had a problem. A debt problem. Vietnam had been expensive. The Great Society programs had been expensive. And the United States had made a promise to the world in 1944 at Bretton Woods that every dollar would be backed by gold at 35 per ounce. By 1971, they couldn't keep that promise anymore. So on August 15th, Nixon went on television, and in a single Sunday night address, he ended the gold standard. Unilaterally. No vote. No warning. No notice to the Geralds of the world who had been saving in dollars their entire adult lives. Over the next decade, inflation averaged 7.4 annually. Some years it hit 13. Gerald's $180,000 in 1971 had the purchasing power of roughly $72,000 by 1981. He never moved to Florida. He never stopped working at 62 like he planned. He kept going until 68, confused and angry, watching prices rise faster than his fixed income could chase them. His banker retired at 58. His accountant retired at 60. Gerald worked until his body wouldn't let him anymore. I'm not telling you this story to frighten you. I'm telling you because what happened to Gerald is not ancient history. It's a template. And right now, in 2026, every condition that existed in 1971 exists again, at a scale Gerald's generation couldn't have imagined. Here's the machinery behind what's happening. The United States government currently carries $38 trillion in total federal debt. To put that in terms that means something, if you stacked 100 bills, $38 trillion would reach the moon and back more than 150 times. But the number itself isn't the crisis. The crisis is the math around servicing it. Interest rates are no longer near zero. The Federal Reserve spent a decade keeping rates artificially suppressed. Then inflation forced their hand. Rates went up. And now, the United States government is paying over $1 trillion per year, every single year, just in interest payments on existing debt. More than it spends on the military. More than it spends on Medicare. More than every infrastructure project in the country combined. Just interest. And here's where the trap closes. Every year, hundreds of billions in old debt matures. The Treasury has to roll it over, issue new bonds to pay off old ones. But those new bonds get issued at today's interest rates, not the near-zero rates of 2015. Every rollover makes the interest burden heavier. Every year the trap gets tighter. The debt ceiling itself is almost a distraction. Congress will raise it. They always raise it. They've raised it over 100 times since it was created. The ceiling isn't the problem. The ceiling is the theater. The real problem is what they do after they raise it. Because 38 trillion doesn't disappear. It sits there, compounding, demanding payment. And there are only three ways out. The first is austerity. Cut spending massively. Raise taxes dramatically. Pay the debt down over decades. This is economically brutal and politically impossible. No elected official in modern history has successfully run on "I will make your life harder so the debt gets smaller." It doesn't happen. The second is default. America simply stops paying. Announces it cannot meet its obligations. This would trigger a global financial catastrophe so severe that most economists won't even model it. Dollar loses reserve currency status. Interest rates explode. The entire architecture of global finance cracks. This is the nuclear option. They won't use it. The third option, and this is the one they always choose, the one they've always chosen, the one Gerald experienced, the one your parents experienced, is inflation. Print money. Devalue the currency. Make the debt smaller in real terms by making every dollar worth less. It's the most politically painless option for them. The most painful option for you. Here's why. When the government inflates its way out of 38 trillion, it doesn't announce it. There's no press conference. No memo to your financial advisor. No warning on your 401k statement. What happens instead is quiet. Gradual. Almost invisible until it isn't. The price of groceries goes up 6. Gas goes up 8. Your property taxes go up. Your insurance premiums go up. Healthcare costs go up. And your retirement account, the number on the screen, might even go up in nominal terms. Might look like it's growing. But in real terms. In purchasing power terms. In what can I actually buy terms. It's shrinking. $1 million in 2026 that loses 6 of its purchasing power annually is worth $744,000 in real terms by 2031. By 2036, it's worth $554,000. By the time you're 80, the retirement you planned has been cut nearly in half. Not by a crash, not by a single catastrophic event, but by the slow, quiet, deliberate devaluation of every dollar you saved. That's the collateral damage. You're not targeted. It's not personal. You're just in the way. I want to tell you about a woman named Patricia. She contacted me in 2014. She was 66 years old. She and her husband Thomas had done everything a responsible couple was supposed to do. They saved aggressively through the 1980s and 90s. Paid off the house in 2003. Built a portfolio of $1.1 million by the time Thomas retired at 64. Conventional allocation, 60 stocks, 40 bonds, the classic balanced portfolio every major firm recommends. Their retirement plan was built around one assumption, that their money would hold its purchasing power. Nobody told them that assumption was fragile. Nobody told them that the bond portion of their portfolio, the Safe 40, the stability anchor, was a direct bet that inflation would stay low. That those bonds would pay fixed interest rates that would look increasingly pathetic if inflation accelerated. Nobody told them that in an inflationary debt resolution, bonds don't protect you. Bonds punish you. By 2014, 6 years after the financial crisis, 6 years of Federal Reserve money printing and zero interest rates, Patricia could feel something was wrong. Their savings weren't going as far as projected. Costs had risen faster than their models assumed. Thomas had developed health problems that added unexpected expenses. She reached out because she sensed it. She couldn't articulate it in economic terms. She just felt the ground shifting under something she'd spent decades building. What I told Patricia in 2014 is what I'm telling you now. The $17 trillion in debt the US carried then, which already seemed staggering, was just the beginning. The trajectory was clear. The debt was going to keep climbing. The Federal Reserve was going to keep printing. And the purchasing power of every dollar was going to keep declining. The only question was whether your portfolio was positioned to survive that, or positioned to be slowly consumed by it. Patricia repositioned. Thomas recovered his health. They adjusted. But Patricia told me afterward, the hardest part wasn't the financial mechanics. The hardest part was accepting that the system she had trusted, the rules she had followed, the advice she had received from credentialed professionals at major institutions, none of it was designed to protect her purchasing power in this environment. It was designed for a different world. A world of stable currency, contained debt, and functioning monetary policy. That world is over. So what do you actually do? Radically. Not eventually. Right now, with a real portfolio, a real retirement timeline, real money at stake. There are 4 positions that have historically preserved wealth during inflationary debt resolutions. I've tracked these patterns across 500 years of monetary history. The same 4 categories appear every time. The first is hard money, physical precious metals, not ETFs, not mining stocks, not paper gold that exists on a screen. Physical metal, gold and silver, that you own outright and can access regardless of what happens to financial markets. Gold doesn't care about debt ceilings. Gold doesn't care about Federal Reserve policy. Gold has preserved purchasing power across every currency collapse in recorded history because it cannot be printed. There is no central bank for gold. In the 1970s, the last major inflationary debt resolution, gold went from 35 per ounce to 850. Silver went from 1.29 to 49. While bonds lost 60 of their real value and stocks went nowhere for a decade, gold produced a 24x return. In 2025, gold rose over 70 in a single year. The market is already pricing in what's coming. Most retail investors haven't noticed yet. That gap is your opportunity, and it's closing. Allocate 10 to 15 of liquid net worth to physical gold and silver. American Eagle coins, Canadian maple leafs, 10-ounce silver bars. Buy from established dealers. Store across multiple locations. This is your monetary insurance policy. You hope you never need it desperately. But if the dollar loses 40 of its purchasing power over the next decade, which is the conservative historical outcome in scenarios like this one, that allocation doubles in dollar terms while everything else gets quietly hollowed out. The second is businesses with structural pricing power. These are companies that can raise prices faster than inflation rises, and customers keep buying because they have no real alternative. Think about what that means in practical terms. When their input costs go up 15, they raise prices 18. The margin expands. The business becomes more profitable during the exact period when most companies are getting crushed. Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Coca-Cola, NextEra Energy. These aren't exciting. They don't appear on Reddit. Nobody at a dinner party brags about owning Duke Energy. But in the 1970s, while the SP 500 went nowhere in real terms for a decade, consumer staples companies with pricing power saw revenue growth outpace inflation consistently. Their dividends grew. Their shareholders stayed wealthy. The dividend aristocrats, companies that have increased their dividend every year for 25 consecutive years or more, are the clearest signal of sustained pricing power. This list has about 65 companies. They've survived oil shocks, recessions, rate spikes, and currency debasements. They raised dividends through all of it. Allocate 30 to 35 here. 6 to 8 positions across consumer staples, utilities, and healthcare. Equal weight. Don't chase the highest yield. Chase the longest track record. The third is short-term treasury securities and cash. This sounds like surrender. It isn't. It's strategic liquidity, what I call crisis ammunition. Right now, 90-day treasury bills yield around 4 to 5. That barely keeps pace with inflation. The return isn't the point. The optionality is the point. When the crisis accelerates, and history tells us exactly what that looks like, assets go on sale. In March 2020, high-quality companies dropped 40 in 3 weeks. In 2008, investment-grade bonds were trading at 60 cents on the dollar. The people who made generational wealth in those moments weren't the smartest in the room. They were the most liquid. If you're fully invested, you can only watch. If you're 20 to 25 in short-term treasuries, you're loading the gun while everyone else is bleeding. Buy directly through treasurydirect.gov, no fees, no intermediary. Or use ticker SGOV for 1 to 3 month bills in a brokerage account. Current yields are the highest in 15 years. When the Federal Reserve eventually cuts rates again, and they will, because that's how they resolve this, these yields collapse. Lock them in now. The fourth is productive real assets. Things that make something the world needs regardless of what happens to the currency. Farmland produces food. People eat in recessions. People eat in inflations. People eat in depressions. The demand for food is the most inelastic force in human economics. In the 1970s, agricultural land values doubled and tripled. Rental income rose with inflation. Real assets didn't just hold value, they captured the inflation rather than being destroyed by it. For most investors, the practical entry point is rights, Real estate investment trusts. Realty Income, ticker O, owns over 11,000 properties and has raised its dividend for 29 consecutive years. Farmland Partners, ticker FPI, owns actual agricultural land leased to farmers. Vanguard's Real Estate ETF, ticker VNQ, gives you diversified exposure across residential, commercial, and industrial real estate. Allocate 10 to 15 here. You're not trying to get rich on real estate. You're trying to own something that produces income and holds value when paper money loses its integrity. That puts you at 70 to 90 in these 4 categories. The remaining 10 to 30 is your discretionary allocation. Sectors you understand, risks you can evaluate, opportunities you can monitor. But the core is defensive, designed to survive the resolution of 38 trillion in debt regardless of exactly how that resolution unfolds. Here's how you implement it without panic and without trying to time anything. Month 1. Open a Treasury Direct account. It's free. Takes 20 minutes. Buy your first Treasury bill. Simultaneously, purchase 1 to 2 ounces of physical gold from a reputable dealer. Start with 3 of your portfolio in each. Month 2. Research dividend aristocrats. Buy 2 positions. Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson are the clearest starting points. Decades of proven pricing power. Move an additional 10 into short-term treasuries. Month 3. Add 2 more pricing power businesses. 1 utility, Nextera Energy or Duke Energy. 1 healthcare company, Abbott Laboratories or Medtronic. Add silver to your physical metals position. Month 4. Add your real asset exposure. Start with Realty Income for income reliability or Farmland Partners for inflation-specific protection. Increase your gold and silver allocation toward the 10 target. Month 5. Review. You should be approaching 60 to 70 in the 4 buckets. Identify what's left in purely growth-dependent, inflation-vulnerable positions. Begin trimming systematically. Month 6. Final rebalancing. Confirm allocations. Set a quarterly review schedule. Stop watching daily market noise. 6 months. Systematic.
No panic decisions.
No market timing. No all-or-nothing bets. This isn't a prediction that America collapses tomorrow. It's a recognition that 38 trillion in debt has consequences, and those consequences fall hardest on people with savings, on people who followed the rules, on people who trusted the system. The Geralds, the Patricias, the people who did everything right and still lost. Most people watching this will understand everything I just said. They'll agree with the logic. They'll nod at the history. They'll feel the urgency. And then they'll close this video, go back to their day, and do nothing. Not because they're lazy. Not because they're stupid. Because change is uncomfortable. Because their advisor will tell them they are overreacting. Because the market will go up next week and it will feel like maybe the concern was overblown. And then in 18 months, when the consequences of 38 trillion become impossible to ignore, they'll remember this video. They'll remember the exact moment they understood what was coming. And they'll have to live with having understood it and done nothing. I've watched this happen. I watched it happen in 2006. I watched it happen in 2018. I watched it happen every single time the window was open and people chose comfort over clarity. The window closes quietly. It doesn't announce itself. You don't get a warning notification. One day the opportunity to reposition is there. A few months later, it's gone. Here is what I want you to do today. Not this week. Today. Open your portfolio. Look at every position. Ask one question for each. If the dollar loses 30 of its purchasing power over the next 7 years, does this position protect me or expose me? Write down what you find. Then build the plan. Because in 6 months, you will either have taken the steps that protect what you spent your life building, or you will have let comfort make the decision for you. The 38 trillion doesn't care which one you choose. But you will.